Hello, friends, and welcome back to Dare Me to Prosper. My name is Avery, and I'm your host. This is episode 61, and we're talking about how to process your emotions or how to do the work. We talk about that a lot. We talk about how important it is to do the work, to process the emotions, to work through all of those old feelings and patterns and trauma and whatnot. But what does that actually mean, and what does that look like? And since I have a feeling, and I'll talk about this in a second, but since I have a feeling many of us are just working through some stuff right now, that is what we are going to cover. Now, I feel like I've said this every episode in February that I am just behind and, my episodes are coming out on the later part of the week. And I cannot make this up. Like in the last couple of weeks, I told you last week, my cat passed away, very traumatic. There was just other personal stuff going on. And then my entire family caught the flu, all three of my kids. And then, of course, I got it, and I am just barely recovering. The flu is really bad this year. I don't know if you guys have gotten it. I hope and pray that you have not. But if my voice sounds off, that is why. But I say that to say it has just been back to back to back difficult situations and sadness and discomfort, just a lot of emotional heaviness. And I know because the astrology says this, because of where we are energetically, collectively, that many, if not most of us, are also having a hard week. And you know what? If you're not, I'm really happy for you, genuinely. But either way, none of us are escaping, the sadness and the grief and the anger and the shame and the guilt, all of those low frequency emotions. None of us are escaping those completely. So either way, it's important that we understand how to process them. And not only that, but what's happening energetically behind those emotions when you experience those things. Because when I feel sad or when I feel any of those more difficult emotions, for me, it really helps to know, okay, what is happening energetically? Like, I want to know that there's a purpose to the sadness, not like a worldly purpose, right? Like, I can probably, understand what I'm feeling in the physical, in my actual world. But I like to know that there's a purpose energetically. I like to know this feeling that I have, is it making my life better in some way? If I process this, is this benefiting me? And the answer is really always yes to that. But I like to know what actually is happening. What is going on beneath the surface that I am detoxing from, or what is moving around that will actually make an impact on my life. So I'm going to use myself as an example, and then we'll get into just how to do all of the processing. But I told you I've had a lot of sadness. Our cat literally died in my arms, and it was just very sad to watch. It was sad to watch my kids, deal with that. And she was just really young. She wasn't very old. And so it was just sad. Okay, I've been dealing with financial issues that have just been a lot of stress and a lot of frustration in that area. And then there's the physical side where we caught the flu, and it's so bad, and I was bedridden for 2 days, and I'm still obviously not 100%. And that discomfort, the fevers and the night sweats and the all of that really, really uncomfortable physical sensations, there's always an energetic piece. So for me, when I tuned into it, I'm asking my guides, I'm, feeling through what is happening with me right now. What is actually moving the needle forward in terms of me spiritually evolving that will help me understand the purpose behind all of this difficulty that I'm moving through. Okay, for me, there was a lot of heart chakra stuff. I've talked to you guys about this before, but just old relationships or difficult childhood. I'm going through a divorce. I'm living with my parents. There is so much relational stuff happening, and I am having to deal with a lot of heart baggage, like old emotional timelines, old emotional patterns where I'm kind of going through a heart opening. This is me personally, but like I've had a lot of situations in my life where I've had to kind of close off, rely on myself, feel like I was the only one that could take care of everything or take care of myself, be the strong one. And so what I received was that I am going through a lot of like heart opening. And so a lot of this tenderness and this sadness that I'm going through is part of my heart kind of like detoxing all of this old emotional baggage so that moving forward, I can have a more open heart. I can connect with people better. I can, not feel like I need to guard myself quite so much, feeling like I can actually receive from other people instead of kind of holding this boundary like, no, I'll do it because, I don't trust that I won't be let down. All of these different types of feelings. Okay. I've also been going through a huge nervous system transformation. This is also a really common thing that we're seeing a lot in the collective right now. But not only am I, on medication to help me kind of have this come down because I have been in a state of fight or flight for so long, and my cortisol has been so high for so long, I'm moving now through this transformation of lowering my nervous system, lowering my cortisol, my stress, because you cannot move into a state of high frequency. You cannot move into that next spiritual layer of your life if your body is holding on to a lot of stress and a lot of old tension and things that you probably built up over your life to protect yourself in some way, but now is holding you back when we are moving through this next stage of transformation and this next level of energy. Okay. Also, last night, and I've talked about this before, it's been a while since I've talked about this, but I can see, like physically with my eyeballs, I can see spirits or energy moving around. Now, I don't typically see, I'm not looking at like a ghost. It's not like a face and a body. What I see is it looks like if wind had color, like if you saw a gust of wind and if it was like white and you could see it moving. Now, what I see is not really white. It's more like I can see something moving and it's kind of opaque, but it's almost like a blur. It's like a blur of clear air is what it looks like, just kind of flowing. Okay, that's the best way I can explain it. But I've been seeing this for a few years now. And it usually comes when I'm like sitting down, when I'm in a state of like calm, when I am open to other energy. Like basically when my nervous system is calm and I'm not actively like moving around and doing something, my frequency, my aura is open enough for that energy to come in and work with me. Now, I know now that the energy that I'm seeing is usually one of my guides. I did not used to know what it was. I would just see it all the time, like every night, and I didn't know what it was, but I wasn't scared of it. Like I could sense that it was a positive energy. I could sense that, there was no energy around like fear or anything like that. So I knew it was positive, but I didn't know if this was like an ancestor or a relative, like just a general spirit. Is this a guide? And now I know how to recognize it as a guide. But last night specifically, I saw the energy come in, and I see this frequently now, but I saw it come right up close to me. And usually it's still like you're not directly looking at it, but it's very clear. Like it's unmistakable. It's not like, oh, maybe I saw something, maybe I didn't. It's like, nope, I definitely can see it. But you're usually not looking directly at it, or at least for me personally, I'm not looking directly at it, but it's kind of like right here in my, just like barely my peripheral, like almost in my foresight, but that makes sense. Just like right kind of next to me. Anyway, I can see it moving around my body, and I can sense when it's actually touching me or working with my energy or doing something to my energy somehow. And this is how I figured out it was a guide, because when it started like coming closer and like actually interacting with my own personal energy, I needed to know like, okay, what is this? Let me just double check. It doesn't feel like anything negative, but like I need to know what this is. So tuning into that, it ended up being one of my guides, usually coming in to help transmute or to help integrate some sort of energy. And actually, this also happened last week too, where the last time I asked, like I could tell it was like right up here on me, kind of moving from left to right. It's often on my right, but kind of left to right all around me. I could feel the energy and I was like, what is this? What are you doing? What's happening? And what I got was that was working on my receiving, like being able to receive, because I told you I'm going through all of this like heart work. And they said, we're helping you learn how to receive, how to ground into that feeling of receiving without blocking it or pushing it away. Okay. Last night, when I tuned into it, they basically told me like, okay, we're grounding all the changes that you've made, all this stuff that you have detoxed, right? I just had the flu. I was just so sad, a lot of grief from the cat, like all the stress from the finances, all of the different emotions that I processed, right? Newly processed, but I processed. And they were telling me like, okay, now we're grounding that. We're integrating that. We are getting everything settled in your physical body so that now we can actually move forward, which means that my nervous system is more settled. I can hold higher frequency energy. I'm being prepared for more aligned career work and more aligned relationships and a healthier physical body and an opening of my spiritual gifts and everything that aligns with those higher frequencies that I wouldn't be able to hold if I didn't process all of this old energy. And I can also feel this in my body when it's happening. Like I've talked about this before. It's been a while and it's been a few episodes, but how I have these like really strong kind of twitching sensations whenever energy is being released from my body, which during meditation, it happens really, really intensely, but it also happens anytime throughout the day. If I set an intention to release a certain energy or to make a certain shift in my emotional state or my energy in general, I automatically get a little like, it's like a shiver almost. And I can feel that energy release. I've always had a really sensitive system. And this started happening to me back in 2020 when I really started getting into those deep meditations and accessing a level that I had never accessed before. And that's when I started to be able to feel this energy release. And now I just expect it. Anytime I do any kind of release or anytime I set a certain intention, it's just automatic in my body. These are all confirmations of me releasing and transmuting all of that old energy. It's confirmation that my energy is shifting from one state to another state, because processing your emotions is a spiritual practice and an energetic practice. None of your emotions, none of your feelings are random. Like, yes, in your outer world, there might be a reason you're sad and there might be a reason that you're angry and overwhelmed. But on the energetic side, there's always a coordinating energy that is being released in that moment. Every time you feel an emotion, you are getting a signal from your energy field telling you, encouraging you to release that old emotional baggage. I'm specifically talking about negative emotions. So anytime you feel a negative feeling, a negative emotion, an uncomfortable emotion, that's you getting a signal from your energy field telling you, hey, there's something here that needs to be released. There's some old emotional baggage. There's something that needs to be reset. There's something that needs to be integrated so that you can move to a more positive vibrational state. And here's where we get into how this works. When you have those emotions are energy moving through your body. They're not problems to be fixed. They are energies to be felt. And again, those low frequency emotions are signaling what needs to be moved out of your energy field. And each emotion carries specific information about what is blocked, about what unprocessed trauma you are still carrying, what old negative patterns still need to be released. And a lot of times, these are basically old feelings that you have felt that maybe you didn't fully release. Like maybe you kind of held them in. You didn't fully acknowledge them. You pushed them away. Or maybe there was some kind of repetitive hurt that you just didn't know how to deal with. Maybe you were a child and, you had some trauma that you also didn't know how to deal with. You were wounded somehow, and so you learned to not trust people or not trust situations because that was your way of protecting your heart. But now we can't hold on to all of those things and move forward to get to where we need to go in this next energetic phase. So, sadness and grief is usually communicating that you need to release old feelings of loss. Like maybe you lost someone, that grief, old emotions, again, that you've carried around, old habits, old ways of being, like hurt from relationships or lost connections, not just losing a loved one, but maybe losing a friend or a partner. Maybe, again, your heart is really closed off from past wounds. Like any way that your heart has been wounded and you experience sadness or maybe just tension around that topic is a signal that that needs to be released. That's why when you lose someone or when something that really hurts happens, you cry. Crying is one way that your body releases a lot of that emotion. So if you don't allow yourself to cry when that feeling comes up, you are just shoving that emotion back down. You're not allowing it to process. And if you don't usually process by crying, then your body might be releasing that in other ways. Maybe you need to sleep a lot. Maybe you need to move your body. And we'll get to all that stuff in a minute, but that's what's being communicated with sadness. If you're feeling anger or frustration, a lot of times that is old wounds where maybe you felt restricted or maybe you felt repressed or unseen or belittled or overlooked. Like all of these different ways where you were not able to express yourself in the way that you needed to, even if you felt frustrated, even if you felt that anger. It's that old wound, that old overloaded energy that your body is holding on to. And so when you have these angry, maybe outbursts, whether you're yelling or whether you're punching something, not a person, but like a pillow or a punching bag. Maybe you just need to get out of the house, you need to breathe, like whatever way you're expressing it physically, that is your body telling you, hey, there's some things that need to be acknowledged internally, okay? Anxiety and fear, a lot of times that's just like misalignment. So it could be from a past traumatic thing that's happened that causes you to feel fear around a certain topic. A lot of times it's just misalignment. It's tension in your nervous system. And this is kind of hard for people to understand because a lot of times we think, well, I'm fearful because of this situation, or I read this, or I saw this, or this is going on in the world, and it makes me feel afraid. It makes me feel anxious. And yes, that's the mental piece of it. But a lot of it is actually tied to your nervous system. If your nervous system is tense, if your nervous system is chronically in that fight or flight state, you will feel more anxiety and fear naturally because that is the energy that you are aligned to. When I started getting my nervous system to kind of calm down, when I started getting my baseline down, both through medication and meditation, and honestly, just getting out of the toxic environment that I was in when I left my marriage, it took me months and months. And I'm still really kind of doing it and refining that now. But it took a long time for me to bring down my baseline. But what I will tell you is now that my nervous system is much, much, much more stabilized, I do not have nearly the level of fear and anxiety that I used to carry around on a daily basis. Like I was just really anxious. I was really afraid, especially around like my kids, or I'm worried about this, I'm worried about that. Not that I don't worry about my kids, but I'm not living my life out of that constant state of anxiety like I was previously. And it's funny because now I will catch myself all the time. And this is how I know my nervous system is getting used to settling into that new baseline. But I will catch myself all the time where I'll realize I'm tensed. I will realize my hands are gripping the steering wheel, or I'll realize that, even if I'm sitting down or scrolling my phone, I'm like, my shoulders are tensed. And I recognize it and I can go, oh, let me relax. Why am I all tense? I didn't used to realize that I was even tense. I just walked around like that all the time. And so the fact that now I'm realizing it and I'm relaxing, and I realize it and I relax, and that happens to me multiple times a day, that is my body kind of breaking out of this old pattern, this old habit that I carried for years and years and years. And so all that is to say that anxiety and fear often come from that misalignment, that nervous system already being misaligned. And if you can calm your nervous system, you will find that a lot of that anxiety dissipates with that. Okay, when you feel shame or guilt, a lot of time this is leftover energy from conditioning or from patterns in your life where, again, it could be from childhood, especially shame. Shame is a really big indication of low self-worth. So somewhere along the way, you were made to feel that you were not worthy, were not valuable, maybe were not loved. Or guilt, feeling a pattern of not measuring up or not doing the right thing. So when we feel these feelings, it's helpful to think, where is this coming from? Is there a pattern here? What is the story that I am telling myself that brings up this emotion in me? Do I often feel like things are always my fault, even when I haven't done anything? Do I feel like I'm responsible for other people's emotions? And so I carry guilt if I feel like I haven't measured up to that somehow. Figuring it out it's hard for me to just tell you exactly what it might be because obviously we all have different experiences and we have different lessons to learn and we have different ways of processing things. But these are examples of many times where that is coming from. If you're feeling restlessness or agitation, that's a signal that there's some area of your life where you've been stagnant for too long. That's the energy nudging you for movement or for change. Like there's somewhere or something that you are meant to move or change or detach from and move on to something else, move into something else. And if that's not happening, your energy is going to feel very restless. Clearing these things out of your energy is part of your spiritual hygiene. By the way, I talk about this a lot in my course, Sensitive to Psychic. When we talk about developing your spiritual gifts and knowing how to really tune into your intuition and receive those messages, receive those downloads, communicate in a way that's clear and automatic and easy for you to understand. Before you can do that, you have to take care of your spiritual hygiene. And part of that is what we're discussing in this episode. So that's a very important piece of developing your intuition. So that's linked in the show notes if you want to read more about that. And now, just to be clear, you can process things without realizing that you're processing them. Like it doesn't even have to be something that you intentionally sit down and do. Some of us do this naturally. Like I do this really naturally. I'm always really tuned into my emotions. I'm not one of those people that tends to hide or shove my emotions away. In fact, I tend to vomit them. They're very much at the surface for me. It doesn't mean there's nothing left to process. It just means I'm very aware of it. However, it really helps to know exactly what is being processed and what you're releasing. At least for me it is. Okay? And when you actually go to process an emotion, to transmute energy, if you know what you are transmuting, like say, I'm carrying a lot of grief around this old relationship, or I'm really carrying a lot of shame from my childhood, or I'm really carrying this old pattern because I learned I always had to be the strong one, or I always had to take care of everybody. Or maybe I always, I have a lot of anger issues. Maybe I have a lot of feelings around low self-worth or not feeling valuable or lovable. If you can pinpoint what it is, then you can more easily process it. Okay? So the first step is actually noticing it, like just knowing what it is. And a lot of times you might have to think about that. You might have to ask yourself some questions. You might have to think back to certain points in your life and think about where this might have started, or, a pattern that you were consistently exposed to or you consistently repeated in an effort to protect yourself. You know how they say hurt people hurt people. Like a lot of times people who grow up in really traumatic households, or children who were abused or neglected, or just grew up in environments where they were not able to have a healthy emotional state. They were hurt, they were wounded. A lot of times those children grow up to become adults that hurt other people, whether it's violence or narcissism or greed or anger. I mean, it could be tons of different things. But these people grow up to repeat patterns because they never dealt with the underlying emotion. They never released this old baggage, these old patterns, this old trauma, these old wounds. And what that does is when that gets stuck in your body, when it gets stuck in your system, it is expressed in really unhealthy ways. Because if you think about it energetically, all of that old stuff, that negative stuff, sits in your body if it's not released. And when it is sitting in your body, not released, it's going to express because it's still there. And so especially when it's triggered or, when a situation comes up that kind of hits that old wound again, it's going to express in a very negative way, which again might be a tendency towards violence or anger or whatever it is. Those things come from people who have not transmuted energy, who have not released energy, that have a lot of that trauma or wounds or whatever stored in their system. Now, that does not excuse horrible people from being horrible people, but that is just the way that this works. Okay? So first step, notice the energy. Second step, acknowledge it. Give it presence, like state either out loud or in your mind or write it down, like, I'm feeling grief because of this situation. I feel angry because I experienced this and this and this. I feel really sad because my cat passed away. And I feel really lonely because of the stage of life I'm in and not being able to spend a lot of time with friends. And when I tune into that, I know that that is me moving through a process where I can release those emotions so my heart can be more open. So you see how there's like a real world side and there's an energetic side. Like in my world, there's these reasons why I feel this way, but underneath, there's also a reason why those emotions needed to be let go. And then I can have a healthier state on the other side. So it's good for me to cry and to acknowledge the emotion that I'm feeling. And it's okay to sit with it for a bit. It's okay to sit with sadness or loneliness or grief or anger or whatever it is. It's okay to sit with it and just let yourself feel that. It doesn't mean that we're acting on the emotion or doing something, that would hurt ourselves or other people, but we're sitting with it. We're not trying to fix it. That's the difference. You don't need to fix your emotions. You don't need to fix them to have them go away. This is what you do in therapy, right? You go and you discuss the issues. You discussing those issues with a therapist is you noticing them, acknowledging them, giving them the attention that they need in order to move out of your body. Because I don't think you understand how much power your intention has. And that, this applies to all the topics we talk about. But when you give your attention to an old wound, when you give your attention to a negative emotion that needs to be released, you are letting that energy flow through your body. You're letting it come up. You're letting it come out, whether you're writing about it, whether you're crying, whether you're talking about it. When you allow yourself to feel, you process the emotion. That's it. That's all you have to do. Notice it, acknowledge it, help your body move it out by crying or talking or journaling or moving your body, walking. There's lots of different ways that you can help the energy leave. And sometimes you don't have to do those things, but just noticing it and acknowledging it and allowing yourself to feel whatever the feeling is, that's what processes it. Ignoring it, pretending it doesn't exist, shoving it away, trying to hide it by using some sort of coping mechanism. When you do that, all of those things keep the energy stuck in your body, which affects you in a negative way. That can express as disease. It can express as those negative emotions. It can express as lessons that you run into to be learned over and over and over and over again because you haven't processed an emotion that is trying to signal something to you. For example, narcissists, and we've talked about this before, but narcissists carry a lot of shame. Narcissists have a shame wound where many times, it can come from different things, but many times in their childhood, they were made to feel a lot of shame or like they didn't measure up or that they weren't worthy, they weren't loved or appreciated. They carry a lot of shame. And to hide that, to make up for that, they project this energy of making themselves appear better than everyone else. Or for a covert narcissist, just not allowing anyone to touch a wound, like not acknowledging any wrongdoing, not acknowledging any mistakes, because that would make them feel shame. And feeling shame is something they avoid chronically because it hurt them so bad in the past, or there's some wound that they don't want to deal with. But if they avoid feeling the shame and realizing that that's what it is, allow yourself to feel it and let it go, realizing that you don't need to feel shame for something that you did not do, or maybe you did do, but you've acknowledged your mistake or you've acknowledged what needs to be corrected. You can release that shame. You can let it go. You can process it. Let it move through your body and out. If you avoid feeling it, you cannot process it. And what happens if you don't process it? Again, repetitive lessons in your life, patterns repeat in your relationships, in work, in emotional cycles that you feel like, why do I keep hitting this over and over? There's a lesson there. There's something that needs to be released. So your life can't get to where it needs to go. You can't reach these next levels. You can't reach these next positive phases of your life because you're not aligned with them. Your intuition is going to be blocked. You're going to be chronically fatigued. When you do process, when you do transmute that energy, you acknowledge it, you notice it, you let it flow through you, your nervous system recalibrates. You have access to more clarity, more intuition, better relationships, better work opportunities. You get to move on to the next phases of your life because your field is rising in frequency and it's aligning with higher consciousness, and therefore you are magnetically calling things to you. And remember, this is happening collectively. So you know how all this stuff that we've been talking about in all these episodes is happening globally, and we're shifting the systems that we live in, and there's so much emotion and turmoil and chaos that's happening right now. Part of that is us collectively releasing all of this trauma, all of these wounds, all of these old ways of being that cannot come with us. So it's all happening on an individual level and a collective level. And a lot of this comes down to the astrology. And I know I talk about this all the time. I'm trying to learn more about astrology. It's like this whole language that is very complex and there's so many different parts and pieces. But, a lot of times I can gather just kind of the surface level understanding of what we're moving through that is causing so much of this shift. So for example, in my corner of social media world, everybody is talking about Saturn moving out of Pisces and into Aries. And briefly, Saturn is the planet of like restriction and lessons and structure and refinement and kind of pushing you into these uncomfortable situations for the purpose of learning lessons and creating change that will ultimately benefit you. There's a saying that Saturn delays but never denies, meaning Saturn can hold you back temporarily from where you want to go in order for you to learn certain lessons, but it's never going to deny you from getting where you want to go or receiving the things you're meant to receive. What it does do is pressure you to do the work to get there. So again, I'm probably not the best person to explain this, but Saturn in Pisces is a lot about dreams and intuition and imagination and creativity. And so for the last 3 years when Saturn has been in Pisces, it has been kind of suppressing or delaying our movement forward when it comes to our dreams and our aspirations, our spiritual connection. And so when Saturn, which wants to give us discipline, is in Pisces, it's been teaching us where we have been using coping mechanisms, where we have maybe been avoiding things, where we were living too much in fantasy and not enough in structure, where we have needed boundaries with other people, any sort of illusions that we have been holding on to, because Pisces is like this really dreamy kind of whimsical attitude. So we've been finding discipline in all of that imagination and emotion. And now moving into Aries, we're basically taking everything that we learned, all the different ways that we've matured, and now we're moving into action, which is why this is such a big year, because in our actual physical 3D world, now we're going to start to see all the work that we did. And this is why it's so important to do the work, right? All the work that we did emotionally, spiritually. Now that Saturn is in Aries, we get to move forward with action. We actually get to see progress. We actually get to see the fruits of our labor, relationally, or whether that's in work or your home life or creativity, whatever area it's in. Now Saturn is teaching us how to structure the action, how to be responsible with our empowerment, how to take all those dreams and aspirations and ground them. So Pisces is dreaming about something and Aries is actually doing that something. And the reason that this ties into this topic is because on February 13th, Saturn moved into Aries. So this just happened, which means this whole last week, especially, or last couple of weeks even, as Saturn got closer and closer and closer to Aries, we were like purging out this last bit, forcing out anything that was still there. So like for me personally, all of this heart stuff, the sadness, the old patterns, like all of these things that I was still kind of carrying are getting purged out. And let me tell you something. And believe me, I'm not tooting my own horn here because I very much have a lot of work to do, just like everybody else. But the more work that you have done, because this is kind of counterintuitive, but I tuned into this because I was curious. The more work that you have done, the harder it might be for you when we go through those transitions, because basically you have opened up all of those areas. You have given access for all of that energy to come out. So when we move into this transitional phase, all of that energy starts moving out. If you didn't give it an access point, it's going to try to express, but if you don't acknowledge it, it's very difficult for that energy to actually flow and move out of you. So the more work you have done, the more you have acknowledged and kind of opened up those spaces for that energy to come out, the harder of a time you might have when these pressure energies start moving through. Okay, so if you've been going through the ringer, it's actually a good thing. Okay, and then there's all this other stuff like Pluto moving into Aquarius, which is really big for like death and rebirth, especially for the collective. Neptune and Saturn are doing something, I don't know. But all of these things are happening that haven't happened in a long time, basically. And it is causing a really intense energy for us on Earth, okay? And all of that ties back to the frequency on the planet rising, all the solar flares that we talked about last week. All of these things come together to form one whole shift. And remember, this is collectively, which is very obvious, right? We're all seeing it. And individually, which you kind of have to turn inward and recognize what's happening with you. And all of this work is making space for those higher frequencies, which is going to lead to a much better life. So honor your emotions, feel them, notice them, acknowledge them, move them out of your body physically if you need to. And you will find that that allows you to step into this higher frequency, especially at this point in time. And again, we meet monthly in our membership group where we talk about these things. We talk about what's going on in people's lives. We dive deeper into these topics and how we can actually apply them to our lives. So that's the Prosper membership if you're interested in that. It's a great way to connect with people who are like-minded. And I just love it. I look forward to it every month. Also, don't forget over on the Patreon, you get an extra episode every single week where we deep dive into like the really woo-woo stuff. So if you're someone that really feels like you're kind of on that next level of your spiritual journey and you're really ready to kind of deep dive into those deeper topics, then you would really love the Patreon episodes. Also, next week, I'm also opening up some options for one-on-one guided sessions where I meet with you one-to-one and we walk through your life and your emotions and your blocks and your intuition and what you need help with, where you're moving through right now, in order to really get to the next phase of your life, the better relationships, more abundance, the better stage of your career, better health, more access to your spiritual gifts, whatever it is. So look out for that. That is something that is coming very soon. But I also just want to say, if you are someone like me who has been walking through some difficult points in your life, maybe it's the last several years, maybe it's the last several months, and maybe it's especially the last several weeks, be encouraged by the fact that there is always a purpose to the pain. There is always something that is moving or communicating or releasing. So the good news is that by feeling the emotions, feeling the difficult feelings, you are actively moving towards something better, more aligned, happier, more peaceful. Okay. I hope you guys are having a good week. I hope you guys don't have the flu like me. And I hope this was genuinely helpful for you. So that's it for today's episode. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. And I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.